In our leading story this evening, taxi associations stage a shutdown in Johannesburg, leaving commuters stranded. They allege unfair treatment by the Metro Police Department, which has impounded 500 taxis so far this year. Our reporter Nobesuthu Hejana has the story.
The taxi associations say all they want is for the authorities to treat them fairly. They claim that Metro cops are impounding their vehicles without a valid reason. Taxi owners are then forced to pay fines of 3,000 rands to get them back.
They are taking disc out of our cars. Instead of issuing tickets, they take the disc out. After that, they come back again, they impound the vehicles, and that's unfair to us.
They must do what they're doing in a small car. If you've done something wrong with a small car, they were going to issue the ticket. You go and pay the fine. So why don't they give us that privilege to go and pay the fine?
The associations handed over their memorandum of complaints at the JMPD offices in Sophiatown. However, the department says it cannot be held responsible for taxi drivers' bad behavior on the roads.
The issues that are pertaining to JMPD, the Chief of Police will address that. As my principal, he's the one that's got the memorandum is obviously addressed to him. At the petrol hike and e-toll, we pay it ourselves. Individually, we pay it. As a department, we pay it. Petrol hike, it affects us individually. So that one will have to go to the government, the higher that being, maybe Department of Transport or whatever, because we as well have got no say in it. But all those will be outlined, because within 7 days of the chief receiving the memorandum, he will then have to respond to the author, the people that wrote the memorandum, and then he probably will have to engage with them.
Meanwhile, the taxi shutdown badly inconvenienced commuters. Many say they were unable to get to work.
So sinibulele ngoba umsebenzi ufika umninzi ngomsi.
Istrike sakhona vele ayisiphethe just because abantu abaningi abayanga emsebenzini, siyajika emsebenzini, akuna transport vele akuna transport ukuthi siye emsebenzini vele namhlanje isiphathe kakhulu indaba yakhona, isiphathe kabuhlungu.
Taxi associations are threatening further shutdowns if the department does not accede to their demands. Nobesuthu Hejana, Afro Worldview, Johannesburg.
Well, joining us live in studio is Mr. Theo Malele, the spokesperson of the National Taxi Alliance, and Mr. John Mnisi from Armstra. He's the Armstra spokesperson. That's the Alexandra, Randburg, Midrand, Sandton Taxi Association. A very good evening to you two gentlemen, and thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Good evening, and thanks for having us. Good evening to your viewers out there.
Now, let's just talk about the strike that's currently on. Is this something that the National Taxi Alliance is aware of?
Look, the question of us being aware, yes, is indeed the appropriate question. We only knew this, over the weekend via media and networks. But perhaps the reason why the strike has happened, I think it's more, reasonable, for a question to ask. I think that the taxi industry has been marginalized for quite some time now. The issues of non-subsidization of the taxi industry kicks in, because if we were getting the necessary support, certainly we wouldn't be going out on rampage. Not that one condones some of the wrong things that we do as well as an industry, but indeed authorities need to come to the party and begin to realize these impacts, that the negative impacts that the fuel perhaps price increase has on the taxi industry, because that cuts across. It affects food prices, and those food prices are being paid. We're paying the same food prices whether you have money or you don't have money. So, and we are actually catering for the marginalized, masses of people whom we would want to see support us going forward. But the current status quo demands that people begin to spend more than 10% of their disposable income, and that is a big no-no to us.
Now, Mr. Mnisi, let me just bring you in. What are some of the grievances that the association you represent actually has?
Actually, we do understand the situation that's on now. As Mr. Malele have said, I second Mr. Malele's, the inputs that he's putting in. We know that we are not 100% correct, but we are trying by almost our almost best to make things, they must be right. But we're working with people, and some other people are not listening to the executives of the associations. But on my side, especially AMSTA, let me talk about my association. My chairman is very, very, very much concerned about this unroadworthy, vehicles. We are working them on route by route at the present moment, but I think we've got already 5 routes that we have covered. We still got other routes to go to try and make sure that people are being carried by, good vehicles that will be on the roads.
Mm-hmm. So as AMSA, you actually are deliberately going route by route, checking your own taxis for roadworthiness.
That's it.
Let's talk a bit more about this. Why is it that people, especially public transport, especially when it comes to taxis, a lot of people, if you ask them, were you traveling in a safe taxi, perhaps 8 times out of 10, you'll find that maybe the seats were torn, or the taxi disc was expired. Some of the things that the JMPD were complaining about were issues of expiry of discs. Some of them, as far as 2012, they've been expired. Unroadworthy vehicles. Sometimes the drivers don't have licenses, or they've got driver's licenses, but they don't have public driver's licenses. In such issues, what can you say about those?
This is a real challenge. And we can therefore not take it, at piecemeals, but maybe we need to break it down into small digestible chunks so that we all understand precisely what is this that is happening within the taxi industry. Like I had alluded to earlier on the issue of the non-subsidization of the, majority public mover. Mm-hmm. If taxi operators, also got, the necessary support from authorities, I bet you the situation should have improved. You look at, the elitist, bus companies that are actually getting a subsidization from government. And the very money that subsidizes those buses is also derived from the taxes that we pay as an industry. And there is this notion that the taxi operators do not pay tax, and that is a fallacy. We do pay tax. We are required by law, even when you apply for your operating license, mm-hmm. to produce a tax clearance certificate. So indeed we do conform. But, we cannot also not condone the condition of vehicles, some of the vehicles that we see on the roads. But we also try to find out as to what could be the underlying factors, for this to be so prevalent. Because in most meetings that we sit in, with the decisive leadership that we have, we always speak to these issues. That people need to look after their vehicles. People need to make sure that their vehicles are, up to standard. Mm-hmm. But if you look at, the arithmetic in terms of, the repayment of these vehicles, the actual cost of spares, the actual cost of, running a vehicle, your variables, it's like a shoestring budget. You see many vehicles, brand new vehicles that are being driven around on our roads, with no windshields, covered with plastic, with many dents around. You, as public, would think that, taxi operators are just raking in and just eating money, not caring about its commuters. That is not the case. The case here is that taxi operators are required to pay about 7.5 if they were to, for the insurances to repair vehicles. And that is money that taxi operators in many instances do not have, because you look at the repayment of this so-called taxi recapitalization vehicles, you pay between 10 and 15,000 rand per month. And that, not all routes can generate that kind of money. You find in many cases, a route will generate 12 grand per month. Where should the driver get, the money to be paid from? Where does this poor operator needs to get money to repair the vehicle, to get it to conform, to standards that would, appease, our passengers? Mm-hmm. There are many challenges, and we have actually brought this to the authorities' attention. And it seems that we're talking to a rock, and people are just not prepared to listen. and not that we condone such acts of just going on strike before giving people sufficient time. But what do you do when people already are frustrated because the authorities are not doing the job?
Well, we understand the frustrations and the issue that you've actually been mentioning, and perhaps it's understandable that they felt driven to go on strike. But one of the issues that the JMPD also mentioned or brought up was the issue of intimidation. We understand the taxi drivers are striking. Why not then allow the passengers to take a bus or to be allowed to be given a lift by somebody else going to work? There was an incident today where somebody was attacked for trying to give a taxi commuter a lift to work. Why the violent element?
If you've got children, when you send the children to go and play, you don't know what's going to happen there. Some other children are naughty. Some others are listening to their fathers or to their parents, what the parents have said to them. We can't be all over the show. Like today, we were going to JMPD at Sophia Town there to go and present the memorandum. And then the people that were on the street blocking taxis, they mustn't load. You don't know what happened. And we can't say it is right. We know that to injure other people or to forbid other people to load, or give them lifts wherever they are working to, we're not there. And then we are not saying we are correct, but we know that there are other people that are going to be naughty on the streets. That we definitely sure we know about that.
And Mr. Nisi, could you just give us a bit of details regarding the memorandum you handed over to the JMPD today? I know that Mr. Malele mentioned a few of the grievances that you might have, being like, the fuel prices going up and no subsidies. What else was in the memo?
The other thing is that we gave those people a memorandum that says when they find a taxi has got a fault, they must give them a ticket, not impound the taxi or take the disc out of the taxi. And then they give it the A mark, and then for nothing, even a tail light, they take the disc out. That's wrong. They should issue a ticket. That's correct. And then you'll pay the ticket, and you'll go back and fix that tail light.
Yes. And I mean, in the past, maybe when a taxi is actually stopped by a JMPD officer and you ask them, why are you not giving me a ticket instead of taking my disc? What kind of responses do the drivers on the ground actually get?
Other people are not so much like, let me say, there are rude people on the road, and then they've got this mentality of saying taxi people are very rude. That's why they are doing this, and that's very wrong. You'll find Mr. Malele one day is driving his own taxi, and then you don't know Mr. Malele, And when Mr. Malele starts questioning you, and then you're saying you think you're clever, and then you start taking the disc out, that's very wrong,
Yeah, and another issue, although this is a completely different angle, but I think environmental impact also kicks in. If a taxi gets stopped during peak hours, which is what we normally know, that stopped vehicle then demands a spectator value. And once cars start slowing down to view what is happening on the side of the road, that causes congestion, and congestion has a carbon footprint on the environment. And yet you also hear authorities talking about greening the environment and making sure that mobility is accessible to everybody. That is just a buzzword. Nothing has been done. Nothing has been done. But another issue is that taxis are targeted during peak periods, and not any other mode is targeted during this time. And what then happens during this time is that we find that bribes have been solicited from taxi drivers. Some instances, our taxi drivers will come back and say, an officer has taken off my roadworthy certificate, and they demand that I come and see them, after rush to come and pick up this roadworthy certificate. And what then happens, it's, hands exchange. They give these traffic officers money, and they get their roadworthy certificates back. This is now fashionable, even when a vehicle has no defects, but primarily if a driver may speak, perhaps not in the right way with an officer, then they make such rulings. And we are aware that at times our drivers are not just, carrying on in a manner befitting. They overtake on the shoulder of the road. They drive recklessly, trying to make a quick buck. But what we are saying, what we've been propagating, is that why can't there be an integrated ticketing system where a commuter then makes the choice of the type of mode that they intend, boarding.
I actually wanted to ask you about that, about the breaking of road rules, because there is this notion that all taxi drivers go to the same driving school because of how consistently they break road rules and in the same manner, shouldering the highways, making their own lanes. We actually are being joined now by the Alexandra Taxi Association spokesperson, Mr. Jabulani Tsangani. A very good evening to you, sir. Thank you. You made it.
How are you?
Better late than never, right?
Okay. So.
We've just been talking about some of the grievances that the taxi associations have actually presented to JMPD today. The issue of the fact that sometimes taxi drivers do break the road rules, but that the JMPD officers should also not be corrupt in trying to solicit bribes from them. What's your voice on this as the Alexandra Taxi Association?
Yeah, as the Alexandra Taxi Association, we was there to the people from JMPD. We gave them the memorandum of complaint. First of all, I think number one of it was impounding of our cars, but we are not happy, totally not happy about it. But the people, they come and I think before, when the only drivers pitching the robot or drivers, one stop sign, they just come into the car and take out the disc. But our taxi industry, what we know that if we make drivers doing the wrong things, it's supposed to give you a ticket or something or whatever. So that's why we say now we are not happy. Even that amount, when we come to the point of our car, that we are paying to them is too much for us. Because we will end up paying 2,800 and something, close to 3,000 per car. That one is too much for us. Even for us, we take the whole month to make this 3,000 something. So look, at the same time to pay one per day, 3,000 something for impounding. It's too much for us.
It's actually a lot of money.
And maybe just to support what my colleague is saying, you look at the removal of the front seat and the jockey seat to conform to the TRP standards, tax rehabilitation program standards. Let's then take a hypothetical case and say, if a passenger were to pay 10 rands and this particular taxi was doing 6 trips per day, so that is 20 rands times 6 multiplied by 24 days in a month. If you then, that is quite huge. If you do that arithmetic, that money could be utilized to sustain the taxi operators, could also be utilized to also look at enhancing the looks of the vehicle, addressing the issue that you've spoken of torn seats, making sure that even the drivers are well looked after.
So what you're saying is that it's actually by law that you have to remove some of the seats that the quantum, for example, comes with?
Yeah, no, these are specifications that were brought about by this program for which we crowdfound, that we needed not to have many facets onto this TRP. One in particular could be the issue of safety belts. How many of us have seen taxi passengers wearing their seat belts? And it also happens in sedans. If you and I were driving in a sedan and I happen to be the driver, I'd be the one that's fastening my safety belt. And the passenger, left front passenger, wouldn't be doing that. Even when you are flagged down by authorities, they will not even bother why this person is not fastening their safety belts. Now, why do you have to force the taxi industry to make sure that all taxis are fitted with safety belts that are not even working?
And I've actually seen some of them don't work. I've actually been in a taxi where it has seat belts, but you find that they're actually tucked in between the seats and they're actually not used. The driver, and when you put on their seat belt, when they see traffic officers, mounting a roadblock, and they just quickly slow down and actually put on their safety belts just for those few 5 minutes.
But if my driver wasn't put a safety belt, they're not supposed to go to my disc of my car and check the disc. They're supposed to write a fine for that driver for not wearing a safety belt, not to go to the disc. So we are confused what's happening now with the police officer now.
But you look at the size of our ladies, how many of them would be comfortable in fastening those safety belts?
I'm not even going to go to the ladies' size. Let me just allow Mr. Malele to just comment.
The other thing is that they say taxi drivers are the most people that are making accidents. And you know how many drivers with the Sudans, as Mr. Malele have said, how many of them that are making those accidents? They cause these accidents. Just because the taxi is involved in that accident, they say the taxi is wrong. And that's wrong. They don't judge who made that mistake because they say the private drivers on the road, they say taxi drivers are rude. They just drive the way they like. And they cause an accident, it runs away, it drives away. He leaves the taxi in the accident. And that's wrong. And then the problem lies with the taxi organizations.
So, Mr. Sanyaya, then how long will the strike continue for? I mean, you handed over the memorandum to JMPD today. The taxis on strike again tomorrow. Have you given the JMPD a time frame in which to respond to the taxi associations?
No, the strike is finished now. Our taxi is going to act on tomorrow. To the JMPD, we give them the memorandum and we give them the 7 days to reply for us. If they not reply for us, we'll wait for our owners to tell us the way forward. But you know the way forward, maybe you're going to say to now, let's go to the strike, a big strike now. That's because this one not a strike, that's a shutdown. I mean, it's a warm-up to tell that you are here in the taxi industry.
Testing 1, 2, just revving the engines there. But just in rounding off, gentlemen, what is the way forward? Because you've mentioned some of the wrongs from the taxi side and some of the wrongs from the official side. What is the way forward?
Let's do this just before you do that, Munisi. You know, in 2016, the entire taxi industry leadership and some taxi operators went to Irene, where we sat and expressed our grievances, you know, and those grievances were then turned into actionable items. We broke into commissions, we came up with resolutions, and we then, you know, that was on the 29th of July, 2016. Believe you me, to date, not even a single resolution has been implemented. And, you know, the one critical aspect of our path going forward was that a memorandum of understanding were supposed to have been signed by the MEC of Transport in Gauteng and the taxi industry leadership. But to date, he has not done a thing. Perhaps that MOU is written in Arabic or is written in some Greek language that he does not understand. And this is not a child's play. You know, tempers are swelling on the ground. People are sick and tired of this because authorities are just reneging in, you know, getting these things resolved. And these are legitimate grievances, for crying out loud, in the bucket. So some politicians must stop behaving as demigods because they are there by virtue of being voted into power. So they must begin to listen to what the people are saying.
They actually are listening right now, and I'm sure that they will respond to you, Mr. Mnisi.
Okay, as Malele said, he said a mouthful. And we wanted to draw a communication line between ourselves and the authorities. If they can do that with us, maybe things will be better.
And finally, from you, Mr. Sanganyin.
What I said the last one, we know that in 2019 we're going to vote. But I'd like to tell everybody, that parties, that we as the taxi industry will voting the right person. We as the taxi industry will see who's the right person, who's the right party to vote for him. Because we are not totally happy about the thing happening for us, the taxi industry. But we know that in 2019 they will come for us, it is for our vote again.
Can I tell you something?
Yes, in just
in
1 minute.
Run, as my colleague has said, we are going to form a taxi party that will also go into the government, and we stand for ourselves.
I see Mr. Malele is wanting to watch his hands from that statement.
This is what my colleagues are saying.
30 seconds.
But all that I'm saying is we need to have collective and decisive leadership to address the challenges that this country is facing.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. The taxi associations have spoken. Political parties beware. They might just form their own party to vote for in 2019 if you don't take decisive actions and become people who act on the promises you have made. The conversation does continue, so follow us on Twitter at AfroWorldView. It is time now for a quick look at your weather forecast.